Ladies and gentlemen, it is exactly 1:45 p.m. here in Toronto Eastern Time. Please rise to welcome our VIP delegation led by the Minister Wum of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Chair of the Board, Paula Caldwell-Sonange, and our sponsor today of this great venue, our 30-year anniversary sponsor as well in terms of being the longest-serving sponsor, Goodmans LLP, and a warm welcome to Elephant Trade Services with us in the room, and thank you for your headline sponsorship of this 30th anniversary year. It is my distinct pleasure today to recognize each one of you for your leadership and to ask you to kindly take your seats as we commence this program. Today, we have received a message from the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, and I wish to share that message with you as it has also been conveyed to leaders, including the Prime Minister of the DRC, who was with us yesterday, who will be meeting the Prime Minister shortly. It is with great honor that I welcome every one of you to the Canada-Africa Chamber of Business Conference. In Canada, where diversity is our greatest strength, the contributions that Afro-Canadians have made and continue to make every day to our beloved country are invaluable. This includes tremendous contributions that stem from investment, trade, and business between Canada and African countries. The Prime Minister adds, I would like to thank all the entrepreneurs, businesses, and organizations here today for the great and positive economic impact that you continue to make. I would also like to thank the Canada-Africa Chamber of Business for the incredible work they do to facilitate both trade between Canada and Africa. Finally, the Prime Minister concludes noting that Canada shares an important economic, social, and cultural relationship with all African countries. We have deep historic people-to-people ties, and I look forward to building our continued collaboration in many areas of common interests. There is tremendous potential between us, and I look forward to the outcomes of this summit. Please accept my very best wishes. Dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, day 2 is officially open, and the message shared by the Prime Minister is framed, and we will be handing it out later today as part of a warm sense of appreciation to all of our sponsors and those who've made today possible. One of those individuals has been sponsoring this organization for the past 30 years. Randy McCauly is a partner at Goodmans LLP. This organization is the founding member of the Canada-Africa Chamber of Business, established in 1994, initially as the Canada-South Africa Chamber on the resumption of diplomatic ties between South Africa and Canada, but however has expanded to serve as the truly Pan-African organization, defined and led by so many of you in this room, and those joining us virtually who've been unable to be with us, either because you were with us in Ottawa or because you are currently on the continent or joining from elsewhere in Canada. Randy McCauly is a member of the board of the Canada-Africa Chamber of Business, and his practice here focuses on various aspects of corporate and securities law at Goodmans LLP. Randy has acted for public and private entities, reporting issuers, investors, and underwriters of capital market transactions, including mergers and acquisitions, corporate finance transactions, and corporate reorganizations. And Randy, I'd like to commend in particular your commitment to the continent and your great interest in seeing through the power of capital markets and Toronto Stock Exchange, greater involvement of projects and entrepreneurs from the continent. And your commitment both to that and through this organization is absolutely welcomed and gratefully applauded. Ladies and gentlemen, for welcome remarks here at Goodmans LLP today, Randy McCauly, welcome.
Thank you very much, Gareth, and you're far too kind. Greetings all. Thank you for being here today. My name, as you've heard, is Randy McCauly, and I'm a partner here at Goodmans, and we at Goodmans are so proud to have you here on the second day of this conference and are pleased to welcome our esteemed guests. Of note, I'd like to recognize Minister Wum, Minister in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and a chamber member during his time in the private sector as an executive at Ivanhoe. Excuse me. Minister Wum also follows a long line of our members who have gone on to engage in public service, and we truly are grateful to welcome you here today. Natalie Siala of Elephant Trade Services, DRC, who co-founded the company with her husband, Gabriel Chitende. Thank you for serving as the Canada-Africa Chamber of Business headline sponsor. It's a privilege to serve alongside you as a major sponsor of the Chamber. Chair of the Board, retired Ambassador Paula Caldwell-Sonange. Thank you for your leadership as a former head of Africa and in the Canadian government, and now as the chair of our board of directors to which I serve, as we seek to accelerate our role as a premier private sector body for Canada-Africa trade and investment. I'd also like to acknowledge that the relationship with Goodmans and the Chamber goes back many years, all the way to 1994, to the inception of the organization, when our own partner, Stephen Pincus, was involved in founding the Chamber. At that time, the Chamber was established to develop business links between Canada and the new South Africa. Since that time, we, as the Chamber, have done our best to be in tune with the economic environment in the areas that our clients operate. And as part of that awareness, we as Goodmans endeavored to support the Chamber over many years. We remain a proud supporter of the Chamber and hope to continue to do so in the years to come. In Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's message yesterday in Ottawa, he recognized the Canada-Africa Chamber of Business for the incredible work we do to facilitate trade between Canada and Africa. On behalf of myself and Goodmans, I echo that sentiment and welcome you all here today to carry on that legacy. Thank you and enjoy.
Thank you very much, Randy. It is my distinct pleasure now to welcome Minister Louis Wum, Minister of Industry and the Development of Small and Sized Enterprises in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Louis Wum joined Ivanhoe Mines in December 2014 as General Manager of the company's operations in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and in 2015 was appointed Managing Director of Kamoa, an incredible project, and as you can see, Ivanhoe remains an active member of our chamber. Louis assumed responsibilities for Ivanhoe Mines' development activities, leading on one of the most profound and important developments across the world, particularly in the work towards net zero in terms of copper production. Minister Wum, that success and corporate knowledge saw you successfully develop Randgold's Kibali project as well as your involvement in the Moto Gold Mines project. Louis has also served as operations manager at the Yatela Gold Mine in Mali between 2001 and 2005, and he holds a Master of Science degree from the University of Lubumbashi in the DRC, a great city along with Kolwezi that I was fortunate to visit with many of you during our trade mission to the DRC earlier this year. Ladies and gentlemen, Minister Louis Wum, welcome. Thank you very much. These slides. Thanks.
Gareth, you'll agree with me, if you've been in Lubumbashi, we produce good beer and good music, right? Girls are beautiful, gentlemen are smart. It is DRC. We play good football as well. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm Louis Wum. In fact, when I was standing here last year, I was still head of the Chamber of Mines. And I was building this world-class zinc mine, highest grade in the world, actually. Yeah, and it was meant to be commissioned like third quarter of last year. Well, let me tell you, it was done exactly as I said. And as a matter of fact, as I was commissioning the mine, one morning I woke up, got into the car, being driven by my chauffeur. And as we're going to the mine, he's telling me, on the way to the mine, he said, "Congratulations, sir." I said, "Congratulations for what?" He said, "You've been appointed minister." I said, "Really? You serious?" It was exactly like that. I went to bed earlier, so I didn't watch the news. I woke up early in the morning like a real mining boy. Yeah, and got in my office, checked on the internet. It was me. I said, "Really?" Really? I had to call my wife at home and say, "Hey, your husband is now a minister." Can you believe it? That's what happened. So here I am now as a Minister of Industry and Small and Medium Enterprises. It's quite a daunting task to wake up in the morning, to look at the national flag and say, well, there's over 100 million people looking over to me to industrialize this country, to develop small and medium enterprises, to create wealth, and of course share it equitably among all stakeholders. Quite a challenge. Yes, President Felix came to power in 2018. Big challenges, of course. Remember, DRC is like a subcontinent. Would you mind me switching over to French? Because I think in DRC also they're following me, and we're French speaking there. Are you all right with that? We're a democratic country here, right? So we take on vote?
And they have translators.
And they have translators. Okay. Why don't you switch on your translations? Je disais donc, majority of you are English. The bride is forcing me to speak English. I'll try to do both, okay, to accommodate you. Sorry? Sure. So here's a man who came to power with serious challenges. First of all, bring peace and stability in the country, particularly eastern part of Congo. As you know, there's been a battle there. But also get the Congolese back to work, because unemployment is huge there. Remember, it's a very young population. Mean age is 17 years old. So very, very young population. Need to get back to work. Need to build infrastructure, bring electricity, and care for the basic needs of Congolese people, and make sure they're purchasing power and dignity in life to send their children to school and to have good medical health care. Here's my grandson, meet my grandson, Louis Baraka Watum. You know, when we speak of critical minerals today, critical metals, we think of nickel, lithium, cobalt, copper. But let me tell you, all the metals, all the minerals are critical, actually, because we need them, because humanity needs them. In fact, everything humanity needs, it gets it only in two ways: either by cultivating the land or by digging deeper. These are basic needs of humanity. So see what little Louis will need to grow up to become big like you. As much as lead, copper, zinc, you name them. And it's all opportunities for business. Besides that, you look at the explosive growth that you see around the world today. I was born in Kinshasa in the early 60s. During these years, Kinshasa had less than 1 million people, inhabitants there. Today, we're talking more than 15 million people. The same goes for New Delhi, the same goes for Lagos, and so forth. It's a worldwide phenomenon. But remember, all these people need to be fed, they need to be housed, they need to be transported. They have basic needs as well. And all this is going to consume a lot of metals. Not only copper, not only cobalt, steel, iron, you name them. We have to build roads. We have to build railways. We have to build homes. You need zinc for roof sheeting. We need metals, basically. So if you look at the super cycle now happening in the commodity market, the price of copper and others, it is not only because of electric cars, no. It's also reflationist policies that you see around the world now. With all old nations now have seen infrastructure aging, like in America. Everywhere you need to replace railways, bridges. All these gonna consume huge amount of metals. In Africa as well, you see new cities developing. So we are going into super cycles where commodity prices will tend to be more bearish, sort of, in terms of trends. The copper is quite an interesting metal because there's no way you can replace copper because of its natural qualities. You can put high voltage cables with aluminum and etc. They will not have the same efficiency in transporting energy than copper. And there's a huge deficit ahead of us. Put very simply, in the next 25 years, the world will need as much copper as the entire humanity has used since its existence on Earth. The next 25 years, we'll need to invest $240 billion to develop new mines. And if I look at Kibali, Kamoa, of iron mines, which we developed, I was still heading that effort. It took us 23 years and $3.5 billion to get there. Sure, we can put artificial intelligence today, add that to geology, and we can do all we like, but it's going to cost time, it's going to cost money. It's a serious challenge. Because copper is not just for now for electricity, it's for military use, it's for all kinds of use. Remember, geopolitics today in the world have become very turbulent. We live in a world which we call VUCA world. A world which has become volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous all at the same time. This is the world we're living in. It needs a lot of metals. Wherever you look at, you need a lot of metals, big investments, long-term strategies. How are you going to plan? How are you going to get there? So that brings us to business opportunities for the private sector. Energy is the number one. You cannot industrialize a country if you don't have energy. And DRC, with over 100,000 megawatts of capacity, enough to power the whole of Africa and Middle East as well. And yet less than 10% of people have access to electricity. Yes, there's a plan to correct this, and we are moving along with this plan. Infrastructure. Big opportunity. Remember, when we see challenges, we see opportunities at the same time. We need roads, railways, deep sea ports. I've been running mining operations for a good part of my life, for 35 years or so. And trust me, operating costs, you look at between 30-35% of your operating costs going just into logistics. It's expensive when you don't have the right infrastructure. It's expensive when you don't have power, because every time you crank your diesel machine to generate power, remember part of your profit is going in fumes in the exhaust pipe you see there. And it makes your operating cost to go high. So you need good power, renewable power. DRC has been blessed with unbelievable natural resources like water. Just water to develop hydropower. You can take the map of DRC, you can be blindfolded and lay your finger on any part of DRC. Within a 20 or 30 kilometers radius, you can build a hydropower station. It's just unbelievable. It's clean, cheap. And of course, they also voltaic energy. We have a good sun in DRC, so that also is a very viable option. In fact, now we're talking more about a mix of energy. It's not just hydropower, it's also solar, it's a mix of them. Critical minerals for batteries, for technologies, of course. DRC has a mineral endowment second to none on this planet, ladies and gentlemen. High grades, stripping ratios lower. That means you don't need to remove a lot of overburden before you reach the ore. So it's cheaper to mine with a smaller footprint. It's a lot easier to make money mining in DRC than anywhere else in the world. I'm not saying it because I'm Congolese. I'm saying it because it is what it is. Local beneficiation is becoming more and more of a topic because we need to move from the colonial model of exploiting from pit to port. That is, take the run of mine and process it in the form of concentrates or cattle or things like that, and then take it to the next deep sea port to export it to overseas destinations where real value is added. And it's a strong drive we're looking into now. You take the extractive industry you see in DRC, for instance, today. Take cobalt. copper, what we do with it. And from there, you look at the continuum of value creation, value addition, up to having electrical cars, final product. In that continuum, everything we do in extractive mining and metallurgy, we're capturing only 3% of this continuum. Only 3%. The rest is gone elsewhere. So the plan is to start a long journey, one step at a time, to start adding more and more value so that we start capturing this and creating jobs locally and do more vertical integration in the DRC. Agriculture, a good place to be, a good place to invest. DRC with 80 million hectares can feed over 2 billion people. Yet, there's a sad story there, a sorry story, because we're still importing food today. We're still burning $4 billion every year importing food. But it's challenges and opportunities at the same time. So these are areas where one can invest. Healthcare, e-commerce, digital skills, fintech, waste to energy ventures in Africa. All these are good places to be in the DRC. And I'm here to tell you, and I'm not saying it because I'm a minister today. I'm saying it because while I was in the private sector, I went a few times to knock on the door of politicians, of ministers, to request permitting for this and for that. And I discovered that DRC is actually a very commercial country. Give you an example. I was building the mine Gareth mentioned, northeast of DRC, Kibali gold mine, biggest gold mine in Africa now, one of the 10 biggest gold mine in the world. Very good project. Splashed over $4.5 billion to date. Made a few Congolese a billionaire in entrepreneurship. We needed power. And we're in the middle of nowhere, far from any grid. So we checked on satellite, identified 3-4 sites, potential sites, where we could possibly think of building hydropower stations. And I still remember, I took all these drawings, I went to town with it, got on a plane, went to Kinshasa, went to see the Minister of Energy. I said, sir, the empire is big and the emperor is far away. We're in the middle of nowhere there. We need power. So here's the plan. Can you please allow us to build hydropower stations there? The minister looked at me and says, gentlemen, this country has gone to sleep for the past 40 years. We haven't built any new capacity. As a matter of fact, my office is full of projects here which have gone to waste because it's just paperwork and nothing has ever worked. So why should I believe you? I said, well, all I can say to you is I'm in business and I won't disappoint you. So, right? If that's the case, he called 2 of his advisors. He said, you will abide by the law. They'll explain to you what the law says, what paperwork you need to go through, the boxes you need to tick. You have my blessing. Give me a piece of paper to sign for you. Go do it. That's how it was. I came out of that office, went back to site with 2 advisors. We started doing the feasibility studies, consultation of communities, preliminary groundworks, civil works, all at the same time. And 2.5 or 3 years later, we had the first megawatt. Ladies and gentlemen, tell me where on earth do you see that? Where on earth do you see that? From the word hydropower station, you go for permitting, you're gone for the next 10, 15 years. Remember these NGOs, which are called the new face of international terrorism. They'll come for you. They will come for you. Yet DRC did it, we did it. So there are many examples like this I can say. Only to say one thing, DRC is open for business. And I'll give you a few advice later before I conclude my presentation. DRC is a giant, which is awakening. I was actually I had mixed feelings 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was in Riyadh and I met the Prime Minister of one African country. And as they introduced me to him, he greeted me and they told him I'm from DRC. He said, "Oh, the sleeping giant." I said to him, "Sir, watch this space. Watch this space." We had GDP growth, real GDP growth of 8.4% last year, which is very strong. More and more confidence and partnership with the World Bank, with IMF as well. We just got a package of close to $3 billion. And for the first time, even $800 million for budget assistance for DRC. But all this is because they start seeing the signs of the efforts and the reforms we're doing in DRC, tied to discipline in public spending. How we're mobilizing funds and revenues, how we're fighting corruption. You know, corruption is the ultimate cancer. It actually cancels all the effort of a government. It makes very few people living an opulent life when the majority of people are suffering. And even more, the worst of it is it denies young talents legitimate opportunities to shine in their own country. And they do one thing. They take a little book, which is green or blue or red, it's called a passport. Well, they're gone. Well, they're gone. And they go shine in other countries. Countries which will come to exploit the wealth of your own country in the first place. And that's a tragedy. So a lot of effort has gone into fighting corruption, improving business climates towards coming more together between private sector and public sector. And I'm well placed to say it because we had tough discussions with government on matters of fiscal regime, taxes and others. And more in the DRC, we are coming to an understanding of the basic truth of life. In life, you don't only have rights, you also have obligations. It works both ways for anyone. So one needs to understand what is his rights, what are his obligations, and deliver on them. And then you can have a good conversation, a good place to start a conversation, a constructive conversation to build an economy. We are also looking at diversifying the economy because we're still too much reliant on extractive sector into mining. Diversifying towards a lot of investment are going into agriculture and others. Few reforms have been also implemented in DRC. Some of them are falling directly under my ministry. The development of special economic zones, areas with a special fiscal regime to attract investments and make them competitive on the export market. It is already happening in agro-industry, construction material, in beverages. And we're building more of them because we need at least 6 different areas in the country with special economic zones to attract these investments. We're also setting up corridors for industrial development of the country. You look at the railway between Kolwezi, Dilolo, and going all the way to the Atlantic Ocean to Lobito. It's a corridor where we need to add agribusiness and all kind of other businesses. We're in advanced talk with, it's actually a project which is taking 3 countries, Zambia, Angola, and DRC, discussing how to do more integration to develop the economy. Of course, we have challenges. Local transformation of our raw materials, as I said it earlier, it's a must. We are putting a number of measures now in place to make sure that the more value is added into our product before it gets exported. We need to improve the quality of our institutions and governance. You know, a country with good governance, with low corruption, attracts a lot of money attracts a lot of FDI. People believe in the country and they bring the money and invest. So we have to do it. We need to increase the intra-African trade. It's actually strange, Africa. We're not doing enough business among African countries. We tend to see China as a destination, and this is a destination, etc. But among ourselves, although we have the African Continental Free Trade Area now, we now need to build it and speak in one voice as Africa. Education. We need to educate our people. I spend a lot of time with young entrepreneurs, coaching them, mentoring them, listening to the challenges, to see what we can do for them. And I noticed one thing, a lot of education is needed, particularly financial education. To understand how to run a business, how to acquire an asset which is worth a couple of $1 million by paying only $1, and doing all the rest in financial engineering to acquire it. They need to learn still a lot, a long way to go. We need infrastructure. DRC is worth nothing without infrastructure. It's a huge country. It's a subcontinent. You need the roads, railways, access to deep sea ports. This will make the cost of logistics come low and business more profitable. And of course, public and private partnership. We need to reinforce them. Peace and security, that's a must. The unfair situation happening in the eastern part of Congo, which is a real tragedy. It's something we are looking forward to putting it behind us, because it's taking not only DRC, but the whole Africa backwards. And actually no one needs this nonsense. There's enough wealth to share. In fact, I've always said to all the business people, we don't do business to make money. Money is only a mean to the ultimate goal, which is to create wealth and share it equitably among all stakeholders for more social justice, for current and future generations, and for the glory of God. This is why we do business. So eastern part of Congo, we should never ever seen such tragedy. If it's about wealth, because there's no ideological war there actually, it's about access to minerals, about access to all the goodies. Well, there's no point in killing, raping, and doing all the atrocities we see there. And enough efforts are being done now on the diplomatic front, on the military front as well, in all fronts, judiciary as well, to bring this to an end. I'm very optimistic it will come to an end. There's a huge price to pay for it, but Congo is ready for it. And we need policies to include everyone and have social protection. We cannot move forward and leave few people behind. We only need to take all them and move forward. These are our challenges. This is what keeps us busy. This is what keeps me awake as a minister. And I'd like to conclude by simply saying DRC is open for business. I've been privileged, I've been fortunate to develop 3 big mining operations, all costing a couple of $1 billion, creating over 40,000 jobs, investing over $20 billion, and all have been a success. There's no magic. The first thing you do as an investor, if you come to DRC, remember you have 2 big allies. Your 2 big allies are the law of the country, and then the administration of the country. The law, because it's the law which is protecting your business, it's protecting your rights, it's protecting your assets, it's giving you rights. And then administration, because it's one giving you permitting for you to implement your business plan. So when you have allies, you take time to know them because they're on your side. So it's important to understand the regulatory framework, how the DRC works. What are the laws here? For me to be compliant, what does it cost me? What is the real cost of doing business? Because let's face it, if you are You are in a place like DRC with poor infrastructure, electricity deficit and others, it's going to cost a bit more. But then you need to factor in all these costs and come up with a business model who can absorb all these costs and still leave you with a margin, because you came to make money. In other words, if you come with a business model which is based on marginal or low return, you toast. You're not going to survive long. No, you got a robust business model so that it can absorb all the shocks. Just like an aircraft, when it takes off and the captain tells you there'll be turbulence ahead, well, there will be turbulence. He's not lying, he's going to get bumpy. At times, real bumpy. But the plane will not crash for two reasons. Because they got solid engines. And then the guys in the cockpit there, they care about their lives as much as you care about yours. They know what they're doing. If they have a pressurized cabin, they know they can go hide in the turbulent zone so they can go around it and etc. Anyhow, you'll reach destination. Same for business in DRC. The engines are the robustness of your business model, which I said need to be robust enough to absorb all these costs and still keep you flying. And the pilots are, what I say, the fourth point, a local team. Get yourself, that's a must. Get yourself competent local team. Train them, develop them. I used to say, when I was doing that, make them stars, S-T-A-R. S meaning support them, T meaning train them, A meaning acknowledge their performance, R needs reward them. Then you make them stars. They'll fight for you, they'll kill for you. There are certain truths you as an investor, because you have your skin color, you cannot tell the minister or the head of state. But the son of the land can go tell the minister, can go tell the president, sir, it's no. It's wrong, and it is still wrong, and you're gonna fix it. I've been in that position, I've done it, and I know exactly what I'm saying here, because I've done it. We had disagreements with the Minister of Finance because of silly taxes. We argued for the right to be right. We ended up fighting in front of the president. And the guy to tell the president, I'm not talking about someone sold out to white interest. Any Congolese entrepreneur will face the same challenge. It's wrong, we need to change this if you want the country to move forward. Only local team can do that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation.
I'm so used to saying, Louis, take a seat, Minister, take a seat. I would like to really thank you for the presentation. The one thing that I've seen over many years is the consistency, and that is the message you just gave today is the one you gave as an executive, the one you gave when you inspired a delegation to head to the DRC, as we saw this year. We've got Mine Africa, PDAC, Wayne Floriani, longtime people who've been involved and are seeing the massive acceleration of interest. Ask you about your private sector experience, build a massive company in the DRC. What is the biggest misperception between building $1 billion company and when you meet people who say their particular struggles in the country, I'm not sure I'm going to invest? I know you touched on a few things like understanding the regulation as a need. Is it often just a regulatory misunderstanding? What are some of the factors? Because what a disconnect between a Canadian company building what's soon to be the world's biggest copper production, and of course, what people sometimes read in the news in an isolated context.
How do I get this? Yes, Gareth, it's a very good question. I tell you, I left the country and went to work abroad. I worked in South Africa, I had a stint in the US, in mines and etc. And the day, and in Africa, I built a gold mine in West Africa, in Mali. And the day I decided to come back, friends of mine started calling me from all over the world. But Louis, you're crazy. Why are you going back there? There's war, man. There's Because I didn't go back to Kinshasa. I came back to build a gold mine northeast DRC. So anyone sitting here in Canada or in the US or in the world thinks northeast DRC is the capital of raping, of militia activities, armed groups, and all that. But you know what happened, Gareth? I came because I wanted to feel the vibes and go there first, understand what are the challenges. First night, I was very surprised. The team took me around in a bar, in a bush bar. We had to have their own local drinks there till 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning with quad bikes. We drove back through these bush little roads, very peaceful. Went to sleep and I was looking for the key for my door. There were no key for the door. They said, well, for what? We don't need that. We don't. It's as peaceful as it can get. First misconception. People think that it's a hell there. Well, it's not hell. It's perhaps closer to paradise than hell, actually. But people need to take time to go see. You know, it doesn't help coming to Kinshasa to negotiate a mining contract, sign a deal in Kinshasa without going to site. So I think investors should find time to get to know the place, to get to understand how it works. There are challenges, make no mistake, but there's a way to manage them. And if you get a better understanding of people, of the culture, of the regulatory framework, you're in a better position to do your own homework and see, well, this is for me or this is not for me. But again, I had a conversation with an American congressman 2 months ago in Kinshasa, from Pennsylvania, I think. They were interested in critical minerals, etc. And I told him all that. And he ended up telling me, but sir, you know, we're still concerned about governance and corruption and etc. I said, sir, I agree entirely with you. But the decision to invest in DRC, like in any country of the world, it's a binary decision. You're either in or you're not. But remember, if you're not, I can promise you one thing. You're going to count the cost of lost opportunity in the future. And it's going to be huge to you. Take it from me. Because Chinese who came to invest, no one rolled out the red carpet for them. They came, they saw the opportunity. They brought capital and technology. You think they were naive? They didn't see the risks? No, it's about managing risks. So to answer your question, it's about managing risks.
And how much of the management of that risk, because often people, I think of risk from a governance or regulatory perspective, things like finding local partners. I mean, one of the most resounding successes we've heard is just the importance at fora like these to connect with people who become long-term trusted allies and who have an understanding of the market the same way that, of course, Canadians welcoming DRC counterparts would play that role. Could you speak to some of that in terms of advice? And I'm thinking here of companies who are about to really take that decision and who'll be joining us. We'll be back in the DRC next year, of course, because they're preparing. And I'm sure they'd love to hear what the Minister and former Chamber of Mines President has to say on that.
Yeah, we have a lot of work to do there to better guide prospective investors. People can easily get confused because there are too many players around and you're not quite sure who to rely on, etc. Whereas if we could have a one-stop shop where someone can come and say, well, this is what I want to do, and the whole spaghetti of administration, etc., is behind. So someone can take and guide him through that. This is what we're working towards. But right now, if you come to, say, for instance, natural resources, commodities, and things like you want to invest in mining, in exploration, and things like that, I think the Chamber of Mines is a good place to start. Or in any other business, the Federation of Enterprises for Congo, which we call FEC, which is the corporation of all businesses, and it's very well organized in all sectors: agriculture, transport, tourism, mining, and you name them. I think it's a good place to start. And from there, they can guide you through all the permitting process which is needed.
And if you look at the mining sector now and the sort of catalytic role of natural resource development, what are some of the other sectors for those in the room and those online that you would say are very important areas for Canadian companies to consider in terms of the broader impact of mining on a range of sectors? I know hospitality, for example. I mean, amazing resorts, for example, like Katebi Beach Lodge. But yeah, your thoughts, Minister.
I think agribusiness comes to the amount of food we're importing. That simply tells me there's a huge market for it. So if one can establish agro-industrial units to transform local, because fruits are rotting. We have fruits, mangoes, oranges, and etc. But why on earth do we need to go import orange juices and mango juices? I mean, surely they're almost free, free to sort of grab and just process that. So I'll say these are the low-hanging fruits to start with agro-industry. Energy is also a place to invest. Although energy, I always say to people, energy is not a commodity you sell to a profit. In fact, if you look at all the countries in the world, domestic consumption is subsidized by the states because it's too expensive actually to generate power, transport, and distribute it. Energy is an input to an industrial activity. So you got to couple energy and industrial activity and decide which industrial activity you want. And again, my first thought will be agro-industry. Northeast of Congo, for instance. In many parts of Congo, you have cotton, you have coffee, you have all these commodities which are there raw. All they need is units to transform them and add value and create jobs.
Copper and the various commodities in the DRC are in abundance, and many countries around the world are talking about their national security in relation to things like net zero and many of the minerals you have. What's your message to business in terms of understanding that broader geopolitical context, but also just continuing to stay focused as businesses? And I think about Canadian companies like Ivanhoe, who've thrived amidst what many identify as challenges or risks.
And again, this is mineral endowment that we've received, I will say, from God the Father. Mines in DRC are a lot greener in terms of today's standards. You look at Ivanhoe Mines, Kamoa, for instance. You look at the small footprint it's got. You look at the quality of the deposit. You take all these factors, it's less polluting than mines you'll see elsewhere. And I don't want to name destinations because I don't want to embarrass them. But no, DRC from an environmental point of view is a good place to be because of its natural assets, just the way they are coming to us. And so everyone is welcome.
If I may, on a personal note, the transition from company executive, corporate executive to minister, what are some of the things that you could tell the private sector you may not have realized now that you're sitting on the other side of the table in government? What should they know when they engage you that you wish you knew if you were engaging yourself before entering public life?
Yeah, it's a very good question. When I was a mining boy, I had a very simple definition of mining. Mining is it consists of bringing capital and technology, taking what is on the ground and transforming it in three things. Dividends to the shareholders, taxes to the states, and then something you do for local communities around for them to have a better life. Period. That's mining. That's all it is. It's not entirely wrong, actually. It is. This is what mining should be, what it is. But when you are on the state side, you realize it's not just communities living around the deposits. It's 100 million of people living in an area which is measuring 2.3 million square kilometers. 100 million people who need to have dignity in life. So the little the little wealth you've created, you've got to find a way to share it equitably among all of them because they deserve it, the sons and daughters of the land. And it can get quite tricky from there. So if private sector and public sector can come together and get the same understanding of the challenges ahead, I tell you, private sector can do a lot. For instance, infrastructure deficit. Well, we can enter into discussions to have a less taxes paid and a better fiscal condition, etc., so that you help the state build the road, a section of the railway, or a hydropower station and things like that, and then you have incentives for that. But all these discussions, you need to create a space for it. Where, as I said, everyone understands that you don't only have rights, you also have obligations. And then start from there, and also include the civil society in the discussion, because in that tripartite, this is where things happen. The state sure needs to ensure, and it's an obligation from the state to ensure peace and stability and security, stability of the fiscal law, and make sure that a business investment is protected, that you're not going to change the rules of the game, and make sure that they succeed. Government should make sure of that. And private sector also has obligations. They must bring capital and technology. They must abide by the rules of the country. They must be good corporate citizens. They must help local communities to be better off and transfer skills and knowledge and all that. And then local community also has a role to play and an obligation. They must be part of this process, and they must be accountable for every dollar that comes into a community project and account for it, and make sure that if everyone understands his obligations, we are in a much, much better place to make things happen.
What's been the role of Canada to date that stands out for you in terms of Canada's existing engagement with the DRC through the private sector? Because I think perhaps that's a story that sometimes I hear more of Ivanhoe often in Cape Town at the mining indaba, of course here at PDAC. But for Canadians to know they've got a huge player leading on the continent, any things there that you think people should be aware of?
Everywhere I look back at my past mining experience, whether it's with Round Gold, which was bought by Barrick, or whether I look at Ivanhoe mines, I can go as far back as Motor Gold mines and all these. This Canadian money. This corner here in town here, where you get the BMOs, you get the stock market, all that money came from here, actually. Came from here in Canada. In fact, I grew very frustrated over the past couple of years, not seeing this flow of money coming anymore. It is as if Canadians got scared of Congo at the end. But quite frankly, all the big mines in Congo, majority of them, seed capital came from here, I must say. And so through junior exploration companies, because they're the ones who always go first, fund, and then they get gobbled up by major companies who have more capital to develop the project and others. But it all starts with those junior companies who have the appetite for risk. They take money, they go in the middle of nowhere, they fund the deposit, but then they get to the end of the cycle, and then they have to move to the next adventure, and then they have to let big money companies take over. So it will be good that Canada start again playing this role, because today we see dominance of China. We will be more comfortable to see multiple players and not a monopoly of one group of investors against others. And again, remember the mineral endowment of DRC in such that all the mines which are in operations today, all the deposits known, it's less than 10%. I would say even perhaps less than 5% of the true mineral endowment of the country. So you have of the 90% out there of a new deal. A new deal where those who have the guts to come to do their homework, as I said, to understand the regulatory framework, to build up a business model which is robust enough to team up with a local team, there will be another success waiting to happen for them.
People look at China, and you mentioned you look at multiple people involved in the DRC as an objective. What has China done that you think is noteworthy? But perhaps what is it that the DRC is looking for? Because sometimes people may assume if we do more of what China does, we'll have a presence that is accelerated. But when you speak about multiple actors, what are the specific areas of engagement or tools of engagement that DRC is looking for, without focus on the way any particular country is engaging? What would be the ideal?
I think it will be risky for me to judge or give an opinion on China methods and models. I know one thing. China, they know what they want. And they are executing the strategy with military effectiveness. Don't care about politics, don't care about anything but what they want. And they go for it. I think it's a lesson for all the countries in the world, including ourselves. As I say, we live in turbulent geopolitics today. The world is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. What is left of the world today is to know what you want and what are strategic partners you're gonna travel the journey with. That's all you got left. So DRC is at that crossing of the roads. We know what we want. We want mineral beneficiation. We cannot benefit 3% on that continent that is today worth $10 trillion plus. We cannot continue to operate in value destruction mode. We have to take the steps to say, well, maybe we cannot start building a Tesla car today in the DRC, but you can start producing battery-grade material from our cobalt, from our nickel, from our, and so forth. And start gradually taking from 3% to 7% to 10, 15. A long journey always starts with a first step and then a second step. So this is what DRC want very clearly, and it's very clear in our head, in our mind. And in terms of strategic partners, we are open. We are open for business, really. We lack multiple partners because they have different strengths. China, they have the way of doing business. Canadians have the way of doing business. Australia is also a good school in mining. They have their own way of doing also business. We need all these partners around us, and so that we can move along the development of DRC.
And in terms of the next 10 to 20 years, if you look at the ideal, you spoke about your grandchild, what would the contribution be in a best possible outcome of the mining industry to the DRC? And then I'm going to add to the world, because of course we live in a world where net zero is a global ambition for many.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we need to start with first thing first. We need to lay the foundation today of what this great country will become tomorrow. And these foundations are some of the things I've shown in the presentation today. Infrastructure. Let's not get distracted here. If you don't have good roads, good railways, energy, etc., everything else can remain wishful thinking. Yeah, we need to focus on having good roads, having railways, deep sea ports, electricity. These are really critical. And of course, our governance. You need to have good governance and good policies. In the mix, if you can focus on these issues only, we've set the scene for a better tomorrow, for the generations to come.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, dignitaries, Minister Louis Wum, thank you for being back with us once again this year, and congratulations on everything you're doing in the DRC.
You're welcome.
And for the continent. I'm now pleased to call Wayne Floriani to the stage. He is the longest serving supporter of the chamber, both serving as supporter and a director of the board. He's the founder of Mine Africa and president of this company, which in its support of the chamber has been running and continues to run the largest mining event focused on Africa anywhere in North America. Wayne Floriani is also a key sponsor of several events, and last year at the second ever Canada Africa Business Forum in Zimbabwe, he was one of those sponsors. And it was a truly tremendous forum that brought together 25 Canadian companies who gathered, meeting hundreds of counterparts in the capital of Harare. And we witnessed what Canadian partnership looks like, particularly with Ivanhoe and the massive, massive investment in Zimplats and what the incredible results have been, including not only mining, but the benefits for things like energy. And so it's my distinct pleasure to recognize His Excellency Cecil Chinanera, who is with us, fresh in from Harare, Ambassador of the Republic of Zimbabwe to this great country of Canada, as well as a message that we'll be receiving in a moment from the Canadian Ambassador, who's resident in Harare. And then, of course, you'll be hearing from the leadership and the Chief Executive Officer at the Zimbabwe Investment and Development Agency, at the forefront of growth and partnerships in that great country. Without further ado, to an incredible individual, a key part of our 30-year history, Wayne Floriani, Mine Africa. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Gareth. And as Gareth mentioned, I was very, very pleased to be part of the team, the Canada-Africa Chamber team that was in Zimbabwe last month. We had over 250 people join us for a one-day event there, which I think speaks volumes to the level of interest in Africa for doing business, trade and investment partnerships with Canadian companies. It was hosted in Zimbabwe, but it was not focused specifically on Zimbabwe. But one of the takeaways from that event, and I think what was one of the big takeaways for me, was quite often we put these events on, we talk a lot, people go home, and then it sort of falls by the wayside. Well, as a result of that event in Zimbabwe last month, we're delighted to have a large delegation here from Zimbabwe with us today. We're going to now do a spotlight in Zimbabwe. We're also delighted to announce that the mining minister, Winston Chitando from Zimbabwe, will be our opening speaker at our African mining event in Toronto next March. So that's the Honourable Minister Louis Wum spoke earlier, just before our break, talking about how long it took them to develop their mine in the Congo, which was 23 years. And I think those things start with what we're doing here today, what we did in Zimbabwe, and that's building relationships, interactions that lead to partnerships, lead to a business investment, and us all benefiting from that. So without further ado, I'm going to now turn things over to a very brief 3-minute welcome from Canada's ambassador to Zimbabwe, His Excellency Adler Aristild, who hosted us in Zimbabwe, and not only hosted us, but he had us at his official reception for a wonderful, wonderful, and very powerful networking opportunity there as well. So without further ado, we'll turn it over now to His Excellency.
Good morning. Bonjour. Mangwanani. Warmest greetings from Harare, Zimbabwe. My name is Adler Aristild. I'm the Ambassador of Canada to Zimbabwe, High Commissioner of Canada to Botswana, and to Malawi. As Canadian Ambassador to Zimbabwe, I appreciate the opportunity afforded us today to talk about and help build on the momentum from the recent Canada-Africa Chamber of Business Conference in Harare, which took place only about a month ago. ZIDA, Hatch, and Nexim, who were key players in the success of the event in Zimbabwe, are the perfect people to be reporting to you about it in this session. Once again, I wish to congratulate the Canada-Africa Chamber of Business for the flawless planning and execution of that landmark conference in Harare. It is a testament to the economic potential of Zimbabwe that no fewer than 25 Canadian companies responded favorably to the Chamber's invitation to join that business mission in October. The interest and excitement on display during that conference is something that we want to ensure, that I want to ensure, does not go away. Canada enjoys strong, long-standing bilateral relations with Zimbabwe, growing commercial relations, clear potential, and concrete avenues for an expanded partnership. Zimbabwe is one of the fastest growing economies in Southern Africa due to ongoing expansion in agriculture, mining, and remittances and the services. Last year, Zimbabwe grew by 5.3%. And as bilateral relations are self-reinforcing, I believe that the people-to-people connections that we are building will ignite commercial ties and reinforce diplomatic relationships. Commercial ties are vital. They help create more good jobs, better opportunities, and more robust economies for partner countries. As I noted at the conference, trade represents 2/3 of Canada's GDP. Our exports alone support nearly 3.3 million Canadian jobs. Overall trade with Africa is also significant, and growing. Last year, Canada's two-way trade with the continent was $16.3 billion, of which sub-Saharan Africa's portion was $10.5 billion. While Canada's trade with Zimbabwe is still limited, the growth potential, I repeat, is undeniable. Despite Zimbabwe's current macroeconomic challenges, everyone can see a highly educated population, strong growth trajectory, shared ambition, and stronger business ties and economic cooperation, and a recognition here that reforms are needed to position Zimbabwe as more welcoming and more investment-friendly vis-à-vis foreign businesses like ours. These messages came out very clearly during the Harare conference, and I look forward to continuing to work with the Chamber and with the government of Zimbabwe to help deliver on the rich promise of this bilateral partnership. Now you will hear more about a very successful conference in Zimbabwe from the expert speakers identified for this session from ZIDA, Hatch, and Nexim. With these words, I wish you an informative and productive discussion. Tatenda, Shiabonga, merci, thank you.
Big thanks to the ambassador, and in addition to enjoying the support of his embassy when we were over there, we also had the very, very strong support of the Zimbabwe Investment and Development Agency, ZIDA, and it's my pleasure now to call on Silbiso Chisango to come up and take over the next portion of the program and introduce her CEO and speaker. Silly.
I think I just want to say thank you to Ambassador Aristide. Absolutely brilliant voice for Canada in Zimbabwe, and also one of our favorite ambassadors for the. We're not playing favoritism, but he has been an absolute supporting structure for us, and our presence here really is driven by the embassy. My name is Silbiso Chisango, and I'm the Chief Investment Promotion Officer for ZIDA. We're a fairly young investment promotion agency, and as all of you might know, any agency that is driving FDI into a country must understand source markets. And so in the last 12 or so months, we've been trying to look for new source markets for FDI. The Canadian market was showing a lot of potential because we've got a lot of new investors who have been licensed through us from Canada. And so we started to look at where we should be, what we should be doing in the Canadian market. And PDAC was one of those initiatives. But we didn't know how to negotiate the maze that is PDAC. As most of you might understand, is a complex web of mining interests that come together in March every year. And so we had to find a partner, and Wayne Floriani was our first port of call. And working with Wayne, we were present in March of 2024 here. And along the way, while trying to also connect and engage with the Canadian businesses in Canada, we were introduced to Gareth at the Canada-Africa Business Chamber. Behind the scenes, our own embassy here in Ottawa was also working with Gareth. So it became a two-pronged approach from ZIDA and from our own embassy to try and get Gareth to come to Zimbabwe with the Canadian businesses, and it worked. So from March up until October, Gareth was in comms with Zimbabwe and pushing. And eventually on the 15th and 16th, we had them in country. And it was amazing because post that, we've had so many inquiries coming from our own local businesses who are trying to establish the relationship with the Canadian businesses. But the reason why we're here today is we're following through on the initiatives that we've been engaging with mining companies or interested parties who would like to be in Zimbabwe. And our CEO is just going to walk you through a process of what it takes to be in Zimbabwe, what the opportunities are. And obviously there are gaps. I think you were listening to the DRC presentation. But what it is negotiating it. And the reason why we're here and can tell you how to get around this is because that's what our role is as an investment investment promotion agency. So Tafazo is just going to walk you through a few slides that show who we are as ZIDA and what is on offer in Zimbabwe and how you can actually establish as a Canadian business in Zimbabwe. I think he's just going to run through a quick video that shows what's behind the scenes, and then he'll do a quick explainer on that, and then Gareth will probably ask him a few questions that he can answer for you. Thank you, everyone.
Welcome to Zimbabwe, your ultimate investment destination. Zimbabwe is land-linked through the North-South corridor, which connects the Southern African countries, perfectly placed to levitate your business to a higher level. Invest in Zimbabwe, where transport infrastructure upgrades and modern telecommunication systems are making it easier to trade in Southern Africa and the rest of the world. Led by His Excellency Dr. Edi Mnangagwa, with his goal to make Zimbabwe an upper middle class society by 2030, Zimbabwe is truly open for business. Be part of a growing economy with a fast-growing GDP, where development and progress can be seen throughout the land. Investing in Zimbabwe means growing with an economy with one of the richest and most valuable natural resources, its beautiful, peaceful climate, rich biodiversity, highly exportable, loving, resilient, and well-educated labor force. Invest where sound, efficient, market-based policies are in place, which support long-term planning and investment, ensuring a conducive environment for attracting global and domestic capital. Such sound policies uphold the rule of law and provide a stable and fair legal, tax, and regulatory framework, making Zimbabwe your preferred investment destination. Through the Zimbabwe Investment and Development Agency Act and other investor-friendly legislation, Zimbabwe guarantees property rights and investment freedom that put your interests first. Through ZIDA's one-stop investment services centers, you can get access to turnkey solutions designed to easily set up in any venture in Zimbabwe. Invest in agriculture, including medicinal cannabis, or tourism, renewable energy, and our vibrant ICT industry. Invest in education, where our top-class universities, tertiary institutions, equipped with innovation hubs, are creating breakthroughs in science and technology. With Zimbabwe poised to become Africa's largest steel producer, you can take advantage of up and downstream business opportunities. ZIDA continues to work with the investor in order to make their dreams a reality through many structured arrangements such as private-public partnerships and special economic zone status for eligible entities that provide long-term shareholder value. We envisage macroeconomic stability to continue under two phases of our national development strategies, NDS-1 and NDS-2, towards a prosperous and empowered upper middle income society by 2030. And when all is said and done, let the call of the wild in our tourism sector guide you. Listen to the towering roar of the mighty Victoria Falls, expansive game reserves, and breathtaking scenery that proves we are indeed a tourist destination of choice. Zimbabwe is where investors unearth potential, a destination of dreams where love radiates from 16 million smiles and lasting memories are created. Our beautiful Zimbabwe. Invest in Zimbabwe. Invest today.
Okay. And that's the end of the video, and very good afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks once again for the chamber for making this possible and actually having us here as well to speak to you. You've also heard from His Excellency, the Ambassador to Zimbabwe from here in Canada. Like Silbiso said, I think we've developed such a strong, fond bond with him. And I think his words really meant that. He's not just saying that because he's on the screen, and so forth. And as for me, my name is Tapuwa Mashingaidze. I head the Zimbabwe Investment and Development Agency. We are the National Investment Promotion Agency, so our job obviously is to attract investment into the country. And I think what the video they showed you is just a snapshot of what it is. So I won't bore you too much about who we are and so forth, but more of how we can assist any business that wants to come into Zimbabwe and do business there. So I'll just speak of us as that gateway for investment and sustainable growth into Zimbabwe. If I can get this to work. Sorry, so I think we've seen the video. I think those are just some of the stats, and the video touched on that quite a bit. We're obviously in Southern Africa. When I was hearing the minister from the DRC speak, obviously we are not as large in terms of land size compared to DRC, but it's a fairly large country. In that part of the world, 16 million people, the GDP you heard about. And we also pride ourselves that we train our people very well. And just like the DRC also, it's a shame that a lot of them actually leave the country for the greener pastures. And I believe that opportunities are there perhaps to keep them in the country and benefit all of us. Obviously, given our size, the wider world is important to us. So we're talking of our own Southern African Development Community, or SADC, and then obviously the AFCATA. I think that's something that we are all excited about, COMESA, and in a few other bodies as well. So we see ourselves as part of the wider world. I think more just reasons why to invest in Zimbabwe. Obviously, I think our location. Obviously, we don't have a port close by, but we are close to both the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean. And our reforms, I think it's something that we are also taking proud of and sort of pride of, and I'll speak a little bit about that. And just the variety of the sectors that you can invest in. I know that when you come to Canada here, it always tends that at the end of the day, it sounds like a mining conference, that we're talking about. But I believe that we more than that. And those who came to Harare, I think, got a glimpse of what is possible there. That it's not just about the mines. I think we are fairly diversified at the economy, strong, both agriculture, value addition, and and the supply chains, I think, are well established in Zimbabwe. So it's something that anyone can plug into. Our incentives, I also believe, that are competitive, although we believe that the opportunity itself should be the biggest incentive, but I'll speak a little bit more about that as well. So the reforms I'm talking about here, like Silbiso said, we are a fairly young institution, so we only came into being as an investment promotion agency back in 2020, so that makes us plus or minus 4 years now. And the reason for that, again, is that we do recognize that anybody who's coming into a new country, it's not going to be easy. You don't know the lay of the landscape, and just asking people, what do I do to get things done, can be a problem. So this institution was formed. It actually brought together 3 existing agencies that were there. So there was the the Zimbabwe Investment Authority. We also had another one for special economic zones, and also another one for partnerships between government and the private sector. So the government saw it in its wisdom that let's bring all this together and create one super institution, which reports directly, I think, to the president of the country. So again, just underscoring the importance that the government then realizes that for you to get things done, I think the tone at the top has to be right. So this is why we were saying, and I'll speak a little bit more about what we actually do. And then I think immediately, obviously, there were policies that the government felt that were retrogressive, not welcoming to investment. So prior to 2018, there was a policy that any foreign business had to partner a local entity. So I think that was done away with. incentives again are sector driven. It will take me a very long time if I was to say each one of them are individually. So, but they are sector specific. And I think we're still going through the aftershocks, I guess, of hyperinflation. So our currency is not quite stable. But what we found to work is that we've allowed, since 2009, existence of various currencies in the country. So predominantly now, I think the dollar is the de facto currency in the country. So all businesses, that's what they transact in. Again, it addresses a problem that previously a lot of businesses had, in that they were making money in local currency, and then when you want to repatriate that money, dividends or to repay loans, it was always going to, it was a problem. But now with this multi-currency setup that we have, I think it's also made it quite easier. There was, I think, another key reform is the acknowledgement by the government that after the land reform that happened around 2000, that perhaps because the white farmers who lost their land, some compensation is due for the addition, the value that they added to the land. So again, it's a package that is being worked on. So I think it just sets the tone that we are on a path to welcome investors, to really engage those who want to take advantage of the opportunities that we do have in the country. So we are here in Canada, and I think it's something that we pride now. I think you heard the ambassador to Zimbabwe from Canada. So we're just talking here since we started recording statistics. So we're talking of the actual number of investors who've come into the country. So if I can do my maths quickly there, that's 11 since then. Again, mining, obviously, this being Canada, I mean, that would be their natural interest in a country like Zimbabwe. So we've seen that, but manufacturing, tourism, energy, and services. This is just the beginning. And I'm showing you this because I think a slide or two from now, I'll show you a much wider context that we keep coming here because we believe that the relationships that we're establishing, that we can do more, I think, than what we're seeing there. And so I think this is perhaps just the stats that we've been collecting. I don't know if you can see the numbers there, but so the 2 bars per quarter. So we're looking at from first quarter 2022 to third quarter 2023. So the first, okay, my colors are bad, but is that okay? The darker one, that would be the number of licenses that we issue. And I'll just explain a little thing here. So since our formation is as an investment promotion agency, to acknowledge the existence of investors coming into the country, we issued them an investment license. And I think that's a recognition by the government of Zimbabwe that we do have an investor who needs help, facilitation in establishing their businesses. So it's something that we encourage. It's not mandatory in Zimbabwe that every foreign investor gets a ZIDA license, but it's highly advisable. There are many benefits. And as I'll show you, the things that we can do for a foreign investor, I think make it, I guess, imperative for an investor who's coming from outside the country to come through us. And then the lighter one, or the red bar, shows you the number of investors who've renewed their licenses. So our licenses run for 2 years. So after 2 years, if your business is still in existence, then you renew that. So as you can see there, we've been quite busy, quite active. It's not quite a smooth trend upwards, but I think if we were to average that or extrapolate that, the trend will be upwards. So certainly, so I say this in relation to the slide that I showed you earlier about Canada, that these are the numbers that we're speaking from all over the world. And I think for that period of time, we're talking of investors coming from over 62 countries, from across the globe. So we are attracting investments from all over the world, and we believe that we can attract certainly more investments from this wonderful country here in Canada. And so just in more detail, so every quarter we also publish, we do a publication which just speaks to the activity of the previous quarter. So this is the latest quarter ended the 30th of September. So just a snapshot So the number of investors we licensed in that quarter in the 3 months, July to September 2024, was 168. And the number there, the $1.1 billion. So when an investor comes in and they come through us to get our license, essentially they give an expression or intention of how much they want to invest. So those 168, we're talking of about just under $1.2 billion of what they had said that they were going to invest in. Obviously, this is intentional, it's aspirational. When you hit the ground, obviously things might change, or it might take you longer, than you'd envisaged to establish that business. So at renewal, normally we tend to get a greater sense of how much has been invested. But bear in mind, especially those in mining who are familiar with mining, it might take you many years to naturally establish a mine. So the amount of money that you're putting in on the ground, might actually be, small amounts over a long period of time. So the 56 said that during that quarter, those whose licenses were due for renewal in that quarter were 56. And by that time, the amount of money they actually put in was $137 million. Now, when I look at this economy, those numbers probably, you're saying to yourself, but why are you bothering? But I believe that our countries, we're not big countries. Our population is 16 million. The presentation from the DRC, their capital is nearly our entire country. So we're not really a massive country. So for us, it's more of the impact of these investments, which is why we encourage investments across all the sectors, across all types of businesses, not just the very large businesses. But $137 million, in my view, put in the right place, it's a lot of money. And it can actually make, a big difference to the communities, to the country, and even to the investor. And also, we encourage that, come in small and grow, as your business grows. In terms of sectors, obviously, mining is key. So we also record by sector where these investments are coming from. So that 168, 74 of them were in mining, and yeah. So all these publications, if you go to our website, I'll show you some QR codes at the end, which you can scan, and it will take you straight to these publications. So we've been publishing since the first quarter of 2022, and it's rich with what is available, what we've done, and what our investors have been able to do in the country. So just a little bit more about ourselves. Those who are familiar with the parlance of investment promotion agencies would know that, I'll break it down into three functions, really. So we promote investments into the country. Part of the reason why we're here, obviously, is to publicize us as an investment destination, what we do offer, how we can assist you. So that's something that we do well. But more importantly, especially when you're sitting here and just saying to yourself, I'm going to Africa, Southern Africa, there's not even a direct flight from here to there, so how do I even get there, let alone deploy money there? So facilitation for us is very important. In any bureaucracy, in any government, just understanding how things work can be a problem. Getting permitting can be a problem. Securing even, just things you take for granted in your home country, you worry that how am I going to manage this when I get there? So that's what we do. So that's what we have to do to make sure that every step of the journey, is fully covered. You are not alone. Whenever things change again, we are there to inform you of the consequences of that and what we believe you should be doing to address that. And then more importantly, I think, is to protect investors. Protect investors from anything that can befall you. Obviously, we can't guarantee you a return on your investment in terms of your business planning and so forth. But certainly, since we've been established, there's been no investor that that can say that the government of Zimbabwe treated me badly, therefore I'm taking out my money. So we are that go-between. We make sure that whenever there's a dispute, and look, with any relationship, there are going to be misunderstandings, but we are there to ensure that the law is on the side of the investor. And then I think just some more stats. I think you can get more of this on our website. I think Silly spoke about, our GDP growth forecast and things like that. So I'll just go into the key sectors that I believe are important. So we are commissioning, I think, before the end of the year, I'd like to think, the largest steel plant on the continent. We're talking first year of operation, up to 1.5 million tons of steel and iron, which is huge. And I don't think we can absorb that all by ourselves. So obviously, there are opportunities there. So that's just a picture of it there. And in terms of mining, we do have what we believe can be mined on a commercial scales, upwards of 60 commercially exploitable minerals. And obviously the key ones, gold, coal, platinum, lithium, diamonds, and chrome. But for me, the opportunities, and this will be familiar to those who are in the mining space, that as the Honorable Minister from the DRC pointed out, he spoke of less than 10% of what they believe they have is known. I think we are pretty much in the same situation. Exploration is risky, is costly. And this is where I was then saying that maybe the not so large mining companies, this is the space to do that exploration. We are doing a fair bit of our own, but obviously to cover the entire country is going to take a while. It's going to take much more technology. The extraction itself, I think we do have experience because mining has been going on in Zimbabwe since the 1400s. So gold that has been found in our Great Zimbabwe ruins, trading with the Arab world, and even as far as China, I think has been happening. So look, our people know mining. They've been mining it. They can extract it, but obviously technologies change, and investment in there, I guess, with sensitivity also to the environment, I think is also very important. It's something that we look at. Other enablers for mining for us is energy. So we do have both thermal and hydro, and to some extent solar. But when you start talking of the investments that we're talking about, we need more energy, obviously. So I think there is scope there. The rail, we've got a network that connects pretty much all the major centers, just under 3,000 kilometers of rail, with outlets to two of our major ports. That's Durban in South Africa. Sorry, three actually, Durban in South Africa, Maputo in Mozambique, and also Beira in Mozambique. So those lines are there, but obviously, like anything, it needs care and maintenance and upgrades. So again, and the way that we look at this is that we can section that 2,900 kilometers of rail to investors who believe that perhaps their interest is on a certain part, maybe from their mine to port or from their mine to the processing plant and so forth. Obviously, consumables in mining is very important. I think if you've ever gone to a mining conference like Mine Africa or PDAC, more than half of the exhibitors there are selling equipment. So again, for us, we have quite a healthy industry of mining equipment, but obviously technologies change and so forth. So again, in my view, with the exploration that's taking place, the extraction that's taking place, and everything else that's associated with mining, I believe also there that there is an opportunity in that space. Energy, like I said, it's a key enabler to our development as a country, to realizing that vision that our president speaks of. So I think that's one of the plans I think put up in a place called Nyabira, not so far away from Harare. Radiation in Zimbabwe, I think it's fairly good. We do have wet seasons from November up to about March. If we're lucky, then we get our rains then. But most of the time, it's sunny, so you can get quite a lot of power from there. So for us, the three, hydro is there, thermal is there, and obviously the renewables. More solar than those other ones, I think. But there is scope in some parts of our country for wind. And the opportunities that I'm seeing, obviously, because of the deficit that the economy needs and what we're actually churning out, we do allow independent power producers at 13 cents per kilowatt hour. I think it's fairly US dollars is fairly competitive, and so we have signed on, even through ZIDA itself, a number of independent power producers. In some instances, because there are some intense power users, offtake can be guaranteed, and you can supply directly to those as well. Obviously, our national power utility, which runs the grid, which literally reaches every corner of the country, there are partnerships there as well. Again, on a segmented basis, where you identify perhaps a portion of that grid where you want to feed into or transmit your power from your power station or power plant to another part of the country via that grid. I think that is also possible. So in my view, I think the opportunities in energy are there. The demand is going to be great. And I think what you are earning, or rather what you're selling that power to at 13 cents per kilowatt hour, in my view, is, that's quite competitive as well. Agriculture, I think in Zimbabwe, I think we're known for agriculture. Our climate is great, and our location geographically also means that we can grow our crops, throughout the year, and a whole wide variety. So the picture you're seeing there, I think it's the largest single blueberry farm in Africa. You're talking of 65 hectares under blueberry, under greenhouse as well. So it's quite it's quite a feat. And I think in terms of what you can grow in Zimbabwe, virtually anything. So from grapes for wine, citrus, stone fruits, cereals, livestock. Also the climate, I think, is great so our part of the world, or Africa, is mainly savanna and Miyombo woodlands. So that's great for cattle and all kinds of ranching. So for us, really, the opportunities, in addition to just the primary agriculture, there's also the value chain. Even in the dairy, so we do have a fairly healthy dairy industry, but there's still a deficit, I think, in terms of what the country needs. And as the country grows, the population grows, that deficit is going to widen. So that's an opportunity. Cereal production, it's also quite, it's something I feel also we could be doing better at, and the scope there. But horticulture, especially for exports, because last year we're talking of export earnings of $120 million. So this is fresh cut flowers, blueberry, fresh produce like chickpeas and things like that. And in agriculture, so we've worked now in the past month or so on two major projects that we facilitated. So we had an investor in the Middle East who was looking for 25,000 hectares of land, which we secured for them. And I'm hoping, that the agreements with the various parties will be signed soon. And they really just want to produce on 25,000 hectares, and we help them identify those hectares. We've also had another one who's interested in fisheries. So they will be producing, I think, creating outside South Africa the largest trout and tilapia fishery in Africa. Now, so the biggest opportunity that I see, because our climate is great, but it's also now with climate change, we are also at the mercy of droughts and inconsistent rainfall. But we're talking of, in terms of water bodies, and most of these are man-made, and to the extent that these can be used for the irrigation. So we've got plus or minus 10,000 water bodies. Now, with so much water, clean water as well, it's really a shame that we still cannot produce because the rains didn't come if you got that much water. So for me, that's a huge opportunity. We are only irrigating, maybe 15% of the land that we could be irrigating. So that's another huge opportunity in my view. And then tourism, I think you saw in the clip, I think in terms of wildlife, the southern part of Africa, just like East Africa, there's a lot of wildlife. But there's more to it than that. So the picture you're seeing there, it's actually along the Zambezi River in Victoria Falls. It's called Palm River at the hotel. If you ever down there, that's a very beautiful facility to visit. Again, it's local investments that put money into that. But in tourism in general, I think our arrivals are increasing. I think in the quarter to 30 September, we were just under, I think, 1 million in new arrivals. So again, I think there is demand there. Obviously, there is room for growth and investment opportunities, in my view, is just integrated resorts. Because we believe that our part of the world offers a lot in terms of leisure travel. Obviously, the business side, the conferencing and so forth, I think there's also scope there. Golf estates, hotels, lodges, theme parks, so the entire bouquet of what you can term as tourism, in my view, there is scope for the investment in that. And I just want to talk about also just infrastructure in general or construction. So we've got quite a vibrant institutional base of capital through insurance companies and pension funds in the country. So they've pretty much built our CBDs and all the commercial property. But there is a lot more, in my view, in residential, commercial, industrial, and just basic infrastructure in terms of opportunities. So housing itself, I think if we're in Harare, I'd say maybe 20 years ago when you came back today, the stock of houses that have gone up is phenomenal. But the government's policy now is to densify rather than sprawl, these cities for obvious reason in terms of less strain on the infrastructure, roads, electricity, and so forth. So we're talking now of high-rise accommodation. Our universities also need accommodation, so there is a scope there as well. Road construction, the government is welcome, is open to private parties partnering them to build dedicated highways. Same goes for rail and industrial parks as well. And then I'll just talk about us as an investment promotion agency, what it is that we do. So going back to what brought us into being, that need that we want to make sure that the investor is well taken care of. So our engagement with the investor obviously starts at pre-licensing, where the investor makes an inquiry, what can I do in Zimbabwe? How can you help me? We also register, so we also share with them the opportunities that we believe are there. But it doesn't mean that what we show is all that's there. So I think boots on the ground or feet on the ground is the best way to get a feel of what opportunities are in a country. I would come here and tell you how lovely this country is, but it's only until you go there and see for yourself that really those things start to materialize. So we also help you at that stage to incorporate local companies, register for tax, open local bank accounts, and so forth. And then the licensing you do through us, it's encouraged that, especially if you're a foreign investor, that you get an investment license from us. And it's now done all on our platform. So even from right here in Canada, in Toronto, you can go to our website and start that process. I promise you that it will be done in less than a few days. You actually have your ZIDA license. On the establishment side, so any permits that you want, any licenses that you want, support services that you want, again, we do that. And within that, we've got the one-stop services investment services center. Essentially, what we're doing there is that we recognize that to be able to give you all the services or the support that you want, ZIDA alone is not the issuer of all these permits. There are local councils, local authorities that you deal with, power utilities, water connection. Depending on the sector that you're going into, there is going to be other regulators there. So we brought into our own office 19 such agencies or government bodies that we believe are essential, or are key, or are typical in most investments. So those services can actually be accessed by just one visit to our office, and all of those things can be done. We also carry out aftercare, so Silbiso and the team check up on investors to just make sure that things are going on fine. This is where we also pick up perhaps where we could be doing better, and we advocate, because of our closeness to the president itself and cabinet, we can champion for a better environment, which is actually one of our key mandates, that we should ensure that we develop, or rather we create, a conducive business environment for all investors. Obviously, out of that, we are hoping that we can retain investors. And I'm glad, because from the slide, those bar charts that I showed you earlier, a lot of our investors are actually renewing their licenses, meaning that the businesses that they started are continuing. And then obviously we do monitor and track progress, and hence we can also give you those statistics and so forth. So this is just a very high-level snapshot of what we do, I think, at ZIDA. But the types of investments that you can get into, you can come purely just by yourself, without even our help, without us showing you these opportunities, and just do your own investment. There's no requirement to partner local parties. You can own your business 100%. So those are general investments. So you identify an opportunity and you go for it. It can be in any sector. You don't need any government partnership, any local partnerships. This is you. Perhaps you've done well here in Canada and you're thinking that, why don't I go and do the same thing in Africa and Zimbabwe? And that's that category that we're talking about there. Then public-private partnerships, as an agency, we are mandated to recommend these to Cabinet, because all PPPs are sanctioned by Cabinet. So we take the government party to that agreement through the process of identifying the private party, negotiating contracts, feasibility studies, and things like that, and ultimately the monitoring of that. We also are the regulator of special economic zones, so we grant permits to developers, operators, and owners of special economic zones, and they can be in any sector. And we are actually now working on what I would like to believe will be a model, ideal SEZ for the rest to then emulate and follow. So I think I've spoken about this, but improving or creating a conducive business environment is a major task for us. So obviously the digitalization that we've done, making it easy for an investor to interact with us. So like I said, you don't even have to come to Zimbabwe. By the time you come to Zimbabwe, your license is out. Even your work permits, your visas, and all those things are worked out. We brought down the time it used to take for us to process that right down to less than 5 days. You can register a company within 48 hours. And then we respond to all our inquiries within latest 3 days or 72 hours. But most of the inquiries that we receive from investors, we resolve those within the day. So I think this is just a bit more of what we do. But these are the things that I'm talking about. So if you just scan that, it will take you to that investor portal, which shows you step by step, what you do to just start a relationship with us, to the register with us. You get access to all our feeds, all our insights, all the opportunities that we are, I think, developing. I think if you go a little bit further, this is the one that takes you straight to the licensing portal, where you actually start that process of becoming a licensed investor. We also have various projects that we believe are priorities, so we also capture that on our website. So I think that link takes you first of all to this, but if you click back out of that, our wider website is available. We've also done a prospectus for Victoria Falls, because we believe that it's still untapped in terms of developing that as a tourist destination, as an investment destination. So we've done a prospectus for that as well. for 2024, and these are updated as and when new projects come in. We've also done one for mining. So we launched this at PDAC, but we've since updated it. So you may have seen it back in March, but now I think if you go back there, there's a few more things that we've added there. So ladies and gentlemen, let me end there and say that I could really speak a lot about what we do, but those QR codes, our websites, I think it's there as well. I think just visit that. I think there is a lot there that I didn't say. Even those quarterly bulletins that we issue out, all the ones that we've published up to the latest one, which is for the third quarter of 2024, is right there. Otherwise, thank you for your attention, and I really appreciate this, and I hope that we can engage some more. And if you do need anything, Silbiso stood up there is there, and our ambassador is there, and also the lady, you know, maybe just wave, she can also assist you. Thank you. Oh, okay.
Tapuwa, thank you so much. If you would just remain standing with me, I'd like to call upon His Excellency Cecil Chinanera, the ambassador, just really, as well as our chair, Paula Caldwell-Sanange, because I think something needs to be stated here very clearly, that it was an incredible conference, 25 Canadian companies, hundreds of delegates in total. And in the past month, thanks to your leadership and the incredible work you're doing, we've seen just phenomenal momentum. This is a country where the ambassador personally intervened and said, for everyone from Canada, let's write a visa letter. Let's ensure that the moment they arrive, there's a dedicated line to ensure that every single need is taken care of. And that is really tremendous. And it is something that I think is worth both underscoring and celebrating. And so I'd like to give a round of applause to the leadership from Zimbabwe today. And I can assure you, as the chamber, you have our full and steadfast commitment. And so I invite you to step up for a photograph just to commend and thank you, as I said. Thank you very much. Thank you. On stage for a few questions. Brilliant, yeah. Well, Tapuwa, thank you very much. It'll be great to have a little bit of conversation. I know of all the sectors that you covered there, we saw them in earnest in Zimbabwe, and it was incredible to see companies come from as far as Calgary and Edmonton, all parts of Canada. And some people even moving their families down. I came across both an oil investor doing exploration, having worked in oil, now working in the natural resource opportunities. His son had started a tourism company. Out of interest, what do you think is probably the biggest reveal for people who enter Zimbabwe, and the feedback that you get as an agency as to why they not only come, but why they stay? And I think about some of the companies, if I may say, who were there, told me, we liked your conference, but guess what? We had Zimbabwe on our agenda all along. And I think it's a testament to you, but reflections on the why.
Okay. All right. Yeah, interesting question. So I'll speak from my own personal experience. So I've always lived in Zimbabwe. I've never worked anywhere in Zimbabwe. I've always lived there. I've never had reason to go and live anywhere else. That's how much I believe Zimbabwe offers me and what it can offer anyone who comes. So I think it's important, you know, I think when you come out here and you're trying to explain or to describe what Zimbabwe is to anyone who's never been there, you know, it's like, you know, I think, you know, what I read about, what I see and what you're telling me, you know, it just doesn't gel, you know. So I believe that that realization that people have when they land into Zimbabwe, see just the warmth of the people, and just the place itself, I think it takes a lot of people aback that, wow, this is something to behold. So, and from that, you know, wow moment that you get when you, set foot into Zimbabwe, and you then start to see just the opportunities, the eagerness of the people. And I think our people are also very enterprising, very creative. And in my own assessment, I think honest people that you can work with, I think this is what draws them. I've seen a lot of, we interact with a lot of ambassadors, not just the Canadian ambassador, and I can give examples of ambassadors who've been recalled and they wanted to stay, and live in Zimbabwe. It's that kind of a place. And it's a sort of place where I think in terms of, okay, maybe our infrastructure is, it's limping along, in some respects. But you can, life in Zimbabwe, business, social education for your children and so forth. It's a place that, like I'm saying that I'm living example. I've always lived all my life in Zimbabwe. So, and it's because of what I believe is available. And with more investment, in my view, I think the sky is the limit, as I say.
And, just from arrival at the international airport, the major refurbishments and the expansion, and not just that, but airports across the country, through to infrastructure. What was very impressive for the Canadian delegates was going 2 hours outside into Mashonaland West and seeing what some would call in the middle of nowhere, just this incredible mining operation with Zimplats. And to know that in that for the past over a decade has been a Canadian partnership. When you look at companies like Hatch and others, for those who've been in it all along, and I think of real estate developers too, who've been in Harare in the ups and downs and now have US denominated holdings and earnings, what are some of the things that the successful entrepreneurs and businesses have done, and what would you advise those entering Zimbabwe? So, when the challenges arise, as they do everywhere in the world, there's an ability to navigate that. And of course, you're there for one to help with that.
So I think just the long term works, okay, because Africa, not just Zimbabwe, if you compare it to this part of the world, it's very unstable, right? So things that shake us down there, perhaps not so much up here. So what you tend to find is that companies that have that long-term view and they have really understood and have been on the ground, I think that's very, very important. You see, because in Africa, especially, anywhere in Africa, and Zimbabwe is no exception, you have to be on the ground, and feel it. And when you're on the ground and you deploy again, so one thing that I also say is that if you take that company, big as it is, Zimplats, I think it's this largest single platinum mine in Africa, perhaps the world, largest single platinum mine. And from the managing director right through to down, those are all Zimbabweans, and you're talking a company that's turning over $2 billion, I think in revenue per year, thereabouts, right? So, but again, they've been at it for how long? Through hyperinflation, they were still there, right? The resource is going to be there, but it's how you manage it. And I think local resources in terms of personnel is very important. And this is something that I guess we offer. And we are proud to say that, look, all our big foreign investors don't struggle finding local expertise. So how things work in Zimbabwe and how they work, it might be different. So if you're trying to apply how you would solve problems here, down there, it might not work. I'm not saying that don't have interest or oversight of what's going on down there. But, that's one thing that I would personally say, that those that succeed deploy that local expertise, that local knowledge. So it's not just in mining. I think all the successful businesses that I've seen, I've worked in my past life for foreign companies in Zimbabwe. And if you had asked me coming out of university who owns this company, I may not have known that it's a foreign-owned company because everything about it has been localized to that extent. So I think it's that staying power and, the willingness to see the future rather than the here and now. I think that is what's going to make you succeed.
Fantastic. And, just some of the outcomes to come, there's PDAC, as Wayne Floriani mentioned, there's the trade fair happening in Bulawayo. So a lot of tangible results, and that excludes, of course, what the individual companies are working on. So I look forward to working with you, as do our members. And once again, thank you so much. It's a privilege to be with you and to partner in this collaboration. Thank you again.
Well, thanks, Gareth.
Thanks to Fadzwa. And I'm going to call one of those companies that was with us in Zimbabwe, and I'm just making my way to my phone because I have a couple of questions. Nexim Healthcare's Henry Luken, if you would join me on stage, one of our sponsors here at the Canada-Africa Chamber of Business. And though Henry's a chartered accountant and he's been in the corporate world, he's a true entrepreneur, he does not wear a suit and there's no need to. It's great to see you, Henry. Thank you
for having me.
You're all over Canada right now. Your latest facility opened in Hamilton. It was great to see it a couple of weeks ago. I want to welcome you to the stage. Nexim Healthcare is part of the NIDO group. And in summary, if you could just introduce what NIDO does as an organization, and then I'll drill into some specific questions on what you're offering across the continent, including what, of course, you're doing in Zimbabwe as a result of the conference.
Thank you. But as you said, I'm the president of Nexim Healthcare, and NIDO is our flagship charitable organization we do through which we've designed and offer programs across Africa in access to education, wildlife conservation, and skills development.
When you were in Zimbabwe just a month ago, a little bit about the focus within NIDO that you had specifically in country and some of the outcomes.
Our focus at the ZIM conference was to introduce our flagship South African program, BEAM training. Basically, it is called Building Information Systems, which is a skills upskilling, technical skills-based program that enables practitioners within the AEC environment to better manage large infrastructure projects. So we've through NIDO and our South African subsidiary built up Africa's only accredited BIM curriculum, right? So through BIM, many of the largest projects you see worldwide, mainly within construction, engineering, and manufacturing, they're delivered using BIM. But in Africa, we don't have a properly developed curriculum at any university or any college. So we sort of put it upon ourselves over the last 4 years to work with practitioners around the world to build a program out of Cape Town that is accessible to many of our young people on the continent, so that we don't spend $1 billion on experts to deliver larger projects in Africa using BIM, because we don't have the professionals on the ground to do it for us. So that's why we're in Zimbabwe. And our team that were there did report back that they were quite successful in making so many connections with potential interested parties in Zimbabwe to work with us to bring BIM within Zimbabwe and the surrounding countries.
Fantastic. I mean, with all the work and background that you have on the continent, and I know you've got background as well in the UK, what led you to Canada and to branch into healthcare, specifically establishing Nexim Healthcare Consultants?
Interesting. As you said before, I'm a CA by training, but my journey to becoming a CA isn't you wouldn't call it normal. I was born in Africa in the Africa of the 70s. I was displaced a few times, right? And then obviously through displacement, lived all over Africa. That's why I know it inside out. Like I'm comfortable in just about any city that I get into, because either I've grown up there or I've traveled through it someday. Right, so because of that, out of Uganda in the 70s during Idi Amin, we spent some time in South Africa, then in Kenya, then moved to England. Then from England, I went through school, became a CA, and then worked through the accounting firms and the banks. And then around early 2000, like 3, 4, I was offered a role to come to Canada to work with major trust funds through a major acquisition, right? But then between 05 and 08, that deal fell through because of the financial crisis. So at the end of that period, I asked myself another question: what do I do with myself, right? But then because of because at the time of the financial crisis, there were not that many roles at my level available, because basically finance had closed, right? So I rethought my career focus, and then choose to sort of walk away from corporate finance and set up my own business with a focus on obviously 2 things. One, healthcare as a vehicle for my own entrepreneurial journey, but also a portion of the reason why I set up the business was that I could then use a portion of the net earnings of the business to set up my own foundation that could then use a portion of the dividends plus my own commitment to access to education, conservation, and skills on the continent. That's how I built the ecosystem between Nexim and Nexim International Development, which is NIDO.
Fantastic. And as a result, you've got healthcare, you've got education, you've got the environment. Can you share some of the market-driven solutions that through business you've been able to deliver in these areas through NIDO?
Yeah, true. Basically, I'll focus on three things. One, through NIDO, we're able to solve some of the most challenging problems that we face in the places we focus on at the lowest cost. That means we're able to find partners, right, to through whom we deliver services at the minimum cost without incurring any overheads, right? That means that we've got the ability to scale. We can scale a service or product very quickly, right, seamlessly because of our ability to use private sector techniques to solve a problem, right? As an example, we through 3 East African countries, we're able to keep about 1,200 kids in school without with a team of 3 people, myself and 2 administrators. Now, you can't do that at any school board here in Canada or anywhere in the world, right? So the way we do that is finding service providers, and then we're doing fundraising for bursaries, and then creating KPIs for them to meet, right? So they can, through our funds, offer an education to people who have been pre-qualified by fit-to-play participants, right? So around the same thing, we're also able to work with for-profit practitioners to work with us to build our BIM curriculum at the lowest cost possible and bring it to market, right? Now, to give you an example, in a conversation I had with someone at UCT, they said 4 years ago that what we intended to do with BIM development would cost us hundreds of millions of dollars to do it. But we got there a fraction of that money, right? Because we're able to basically find fit-to-play participants who are only paid for a service, and then figure out a delivery model that I need buildings that basically use technology and use what's called free-to-play participants who you only pay per use. That means we're not incurring research. We're not incurring any costs for unspecific directed research. The research we're paying for is that it's only connected to getting our BIM program developed. So because of that, we've been able to spend a fraction of the money to get the unique program finished and brought to market, and that we can offer it at a price that no one else can because we manage cost effectively.
So with that offering that you've got across the board on the continent, returning to Canada, because I think, healthcare solutions and innovation coming in from elsewhere is obviously something that is very interesting to a lot of people. But you've mentioned, the role for private sector innovation in healthcare in Canada, you think is strong to help deliver an improved universal healthcare experience and system. So in terms of some of the lessons learned elsewhere in the world and the work that you do every day in healthcare, how do you see the ability to enable more private enterprise in the delivery of accessible healthcare for everyone?
Yeah, good question. For any of you who go around the world, you would see that healthcare as a basic right of what's called with universal access is a privilege. Like anywhere in the world you go, it's a fit to participate, right? You have no money, you don't get it, right? Now in countries like Canada and other countries where basically they've got something called a single payer system, there is the struggle to obviously manage the budgets and staff, deliver this fit-to-play service, but also how to achieve outcomes. For example, things around quality of life, life expectancy, access to services and human capital, right? So in the private sector, from my experience, over the last 15 years building Nexim, what we've seen, especially here in Canada, is pre-COVID, many of the indicators were pointing to Canadians achieving or close or above average in percentile terms to their peers who have single payer systems achieving these objectives. For example, you do life expectancy at birth, you see how many people are over 75, then you compare that to everyone else in the same countries that have a single payer system. Then you look at other things like mental health and see how many individuals are facing challenges in mental health, and are they through surveys, are they finding the help they need, when they need it, where they need it, right? Then you look at food and access to quality food and stuff. So what we found through the work at Nexim is that pre-COVID, most of those fundamentals were not so far off, right? But then post-COVID, you found that obviously, like everyone else in the world, access to healthcare, like everything else, became a challenge. And also you had many of the practitioners in the space leave the space. So that meant that both on the supply side of human capital and equipment and basic services, everything went down, right? So then also the impact became disproportionate. Basically, if you're outside the city, you can't get services. If you're like a native Canadian, you can't get services because you live so far away and there's no access, right? So then what can the private sector do about that, right? So through obviously working with our customers, there's several things we do, right? One of them is obviously working with them to figure out how we can increase access to human capital where they are, right? Because you can't move a hospital. You can't move, if your catchment area is, for example, Sudbury, you can't move the people there to come to Toronto for a hospital to attend the, to go through a procedure. So you've got to bring the procedure closer to the people by finding human capital and equipment, right? But then how can you do that at cost? How can you do it optimally, right? Where you don't spend so much money to do it. So what we do with our customers is, for example, rotational talent transfer, right? Where you work with the hospital and nursing home to bring people in on rotation to cover certain tasks, and then non-regulated tasks to be delivered by people who are not too qualified. That brings services closer to people. Now, then you find also as well stuff around credentialing and transfer of talent from around the world, right? So in the private sector, we are able to go around the world and find pre-qualified practitioners who would consider a career somewhere else in the world, right? And we can work with the governments and private sector and public institutions to bring that talent from where there is in areas in the world where they have too much to areas in the world where they don't have that much, right? So these are sort of the areas where we see how people like us at Nexim, can help a country like Canada or a province like Ontario to meet its public healthcare needs and meet its healthcare outcomes.
Brilliant. And you've been investing in Canada. Your latest facility, as mentioned, in Hamilton. Could you speak a little bit about what you've done to date in terms of the brick and mortar, which has been impressive to see, and also perhaps the future, especially as we look to other provinces? I know you've mentioned Alberta before. What does that look like as an African investor in Canada?
Well, very good question. I prefer to call myself a citizen of the world, actually, because someone put the same question to me in Cape Town. The gentleman said, "Hey, why didn't you do this BIM project in Uganda where you're born?" I'm like, okay, well, here's two answers. One, something has to belong somewhere, right? For the BIM program, you need an economy and a country that can support a program like that. Uganda is not one of those. Even if I wanted to do it there isn't the support to make a success of it, right? So then in Africa, you're like, okay, you look at Nigeria, you look at Kenya, you look at South Africa. Then you're like, okay, all of these, which one has the capabilities to make most sense for something like this, right? Like if you're in Africa, you look at like banking, you look at telecom, you see that the major players have come north from South Africa to sort of bring the services to where they are not. So then, so you look at like coming back to Canada, you see, okay, now what makes me do what I'm doing here, not think about the US or something, or Hamilton and all that stuff. Then as a business person, I'm looking for the opportunity as far as cost of entry, right? And then talent, of course, human capital, right? And then the interest rate environment. So you look at like all our offices where they are, downtown Toronto, Barrie, or Hamilton, and you see that the location came in at a price where we could find it, right? Because that's the first thing. You don't find a piece of real estate in a good price for it. If you can't find a good price, they don't know, it won't make sense, right? And then obviously capital to do the modifications and everything, the permits and all that stuff, right? And then the human capital for the talent pool for you to build the service pool to meet the customer needs. So when you combine those three, you're like, okay, now I've got the perfect spot for something like this, and you go ahead. That's how I look at these things.
Fantastic. Well, citizen of the world is one thing, but I think here at the Canada-Africa Chamber, I speak on behalf of us when I say I'm glad you chose Canada. But Henry, the continued commitment to the continent, Zimbabwe last month as one example, is brilliant. And thank you for your support and your leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, Henry Luken, CEO and founder, Nexim Healthcare, rounding us off today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Well, our program, including the Center for the Great Lakes presentation, won't be taking place today, but we'll keep you posted on that. The result is we're ending a little earlier than initially anticipated, but I know in many senses that's by popular demand. For many of you, I know you've traveled a great distance to be here, and so there's an evening free tonight as needed before another full day tomorrow. Particularly considering many of you, myself included, and Paula, among others, flew in from Ottawa this morning following the dinner with our sponsors last night in the capital. I do want to just do a quick recap. If you have not received an invitation or a rundown of the program tomorrow in your email within the last 10 minutes, please let me know or any one of the members of our team. If you are registered, all the details are there, including the latest updates, the times of the arrival, luncheons, the networking, and so forth. It is going to be a big day, and we're very excited to see each one of you there to close what the Prime Minister calls 3 days of outcomes, as we heard earlier this morning. I'd also like to specifically thank Goodmans once again for hosting us, as they've done for the past 30 years. Elephant Trade Services DRC for their headline sponsorship of the Chamber this year, as well as Mine Africa for the incredible work led by Wayne Floriani as we continue together to run the biggest mining-focused event on Africa anywhere in North America coming up in March. And I look forward to seeing many of you then. We'll also be keeping you posted on the programming across the continent starting next year. And already we've seen Zambia, Namibia, the DRC, of course, Nigeria, among some of the discussions as we prepare going into 2025. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming through and spending the afternoon with us for this half day. If you're visiting and you have any questions or you haven't yet checked in for your hotel, you need help with taxis, members, do let us know. We're on hand to support and make sure your stay in Canada is tremendous. Have a wonderful evening. See you tomorrow, 8:30, Ernst & Young, just across the street, top floor. Thank you.